numbers are falling, but that is really only part of the story.
The other part is that the National Association of Realtors says sales of existing homes, yes, they did fall 1.2% in October. They have been falling for 8 straight months. But take a look at this. The median price of a home sold last month fell 5.1%. That happens to be the biggest year-over-year drop ever. So the prices are just tanking.
And the question is, how low will they go? Let's put that one to our Fox panel. First up, Rob Stein of Astor Financial. Good to see you, Rob. What's your guesstimate of how low these prices will go?
You know, I think it depends on what part of the country you're talking about. You know, clearly there's some more room on the downside. I wouldn't say that the bottom is near in the next month or two. But some of the parts of the country, I think, will weather it better than others. Here in the Midwest, I can't imagine we were near that 5% average, but maybe another 5%, 3%. And I think there's parts of the country that might go 8, 9, maybe even another 10%. But you have to remember the amazing appreciation we've had over the last 4, 5, 6 years. We were at all-time highs as recently as 18 months ago.
But the question, Rob, is at what point will the prices have come down so far that that will really spur buying?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a price thing. I think people buy when they're confident about their job and their employment picture, when they feel comfortable with interest rates and the economy as a whole. I don't know that price is the only thing that's factoring into it right now. So you have declining prices which aren't really soaking up the excess supply that's out there, but the uncertainty that's in the economy when you hear about what's happening in the mortgage markets, when you see the stock market declining day after day, today notwithstanding, it makes you cautious about buying. And I think when those things stabilize, you'll get buying coming in.
Nicole Ridgway, the thing is the speculators are gone. You don't have speculators coming in. You used to have both people that really needed houses and a lot of speculators in, too. Now we've cut out one of those groups. Hold on a second, Rod. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. Well, now we're seeing the speculators who maybe bought these properties as investment properties and wanted to rent them out. Some of them are foreclosing on those properties, too, so they're getting squeezed as well. And I agree. I think there's going to be another 5 to 10% correction in home prices, depending on what areas. Obviously, like cities in Florida like Tampa and Miami are getting hit harder than places in the Midwest. So, you know, and there is that psychological component of what people feel they can buy at this time.
Peter Schiff, I know that you live in Connecticut. What is your neighborhood? I'm talking the surrounding streets, which I'm sure it's a very nice neighborhood. What are you seeing? A lot of for sale signs, and is that enough to get people to start buying?
Well, you know, I've only lived there for 8 or 9 months, and all the houses that were for sale when I got there are still for sale. There's probably 5 or 6 houses that are multi-million-dollar homes that have never even been lived in, that are empty and for sale. But, you know, there's 2 key points. One is, you know, you already have a record number of Americans who already own homes. So there's not a lot of buyers out there. There's a lot more people trying to sell homes and buy homes. But the more important question is not how low home prices will have to go for buyers to want to buy, but how low will they have to go before lenders are comfortable lending. That's the key. And what's going to happen over the next few years is lenders are going to start requiring 20% or more down payments. They're going to require honest appraisals. They're going to require fully amortized mortgages. And based on how little savings the average American has and what our income is, prices are going to have to collapse before they're low enough for anybody to want to lend anybody money to buy.
But, Mike Norman, we've lived with situations similar to that before. I can remember when you couldn't get a loan unless you had at least 15% down payment, and you had to have all those guarantees. It's just that we've been living the high life for a while. Now we're going to go back to a more conservative life.
First, I just want to say on Peter's block, there are all these beautiful homes. Then there's a bunker right in the middle of all. That's where Peter lives.
That's a joke, Peter. You can laugh.
I digress here. As a corollary to what Rob said, you know, on the demand side, let's look at that. And kind of, you know, in contrast to what Peter said, God, isn't that, you know, different from what a position I take, a surprise. Population is growing by 3 million Americans a year. We're now building 700,000 units of new homes a year, 1.2 million of total new homes a year. It's not keeping up with the growth in population, which means, and don't forget, underlying the job market, et cetera, earnings still pretty decent. Prices might not have to come down that much more because of demographic factors, the growth in population. Peter, that's where your demand comes in. You're totally forgetting about the demand side. I understand the supply. You're
There's
forgetting
going to
about
be
the
demand, Mike. There's going to be demand, but at substantially lower prices. People cannot afford these crazy prices. You know, David, when you talked about in the past when you had to put a high down payment, sure, but prices were a lot lower back then. The prices that exist today, these price levels are phony. They only got here because of the fact that you can buy a house with none of your own money and have a teaser rate. These are fantasy prices.
And Nicole,
they're going to go away.
You can't tell me that these houses that were built as spec houses maybe 2 years ago before the fall in housing, and they're empty, and these guys have this price on their back because they put out the money to build a home that somebody's not going to go under soon, and this is going to be a chain reaction.
I mean, there's definitely going to be some fallout from all of this. You know, you just can't have all this inventory sort of laying around. You know, home builders are going to be hurt. There's no doubt about it.
Already are in some cases.
And they will further. I think, you know, the next 3 to 6 months, we're still going to see a lot of the prices.
I'm just wondering if all
we have to get rid of that inventory.
What about all those petrodollars? Might we have a lot of buying coming over from Arab sheiks?
Look, you know, that's the interesting thing. We've always had this conversation. How come oil prices not tanking the economy? There's a certain circular flow there. We're seeing it come back again. Abu Dhabi. But listen, there's a flip side to the housing thing. Yes, some people made bad decisions. They bought when prices are too high. Some people are going to benefit from that, right? They're going to get real assets, real property, housing at lower prices. That's a good thing.
Well, and finally, the rumor is, and it's not even a rumor, it's pretty much substantiated, that a lot of Canadians are coming down and buying up all the cheaper properties in Florida. I mean, you know, this is
that's not good for America.
You never saw Canadians in
sure
Florida.
it's good for America.
No,
they're coming
buying,
here
they're
and they're
buying our
spending
assets.
money.
Liz, they're buying our assets out from under us, and ultimately what's going to happen is the dollar continues to tank. Foreigners are going to end up buying all this stuff. You think it's a good trade-off? We get their oil, and they get our corporations. They get our prime real estate. America, we're selling off our farm to buy milk.
All right, well, gang, another thing, by the way, that's coming down, Rod, is the price of oil. As we speak, it's about 3 minutes from the close. $90.58 it's going down. Is that going to affect all this?
Yes, I mean, oil prices have an impact on the economy, not nearly as significant as you think. I mean, oil has tripled. If I told you 2 years ago that oil was going to go near $100 a barrel, would you have told me that the stock market would have gone up 20% in that same time period?
We borrowed the money to pay for it. That's the problem. We haven't paid for it yet. We borrowed all that money.
Well, the economy is still growing. GDP is probably going to come in close to 5% tomorrow.
That's if you believe the government. If you believe reality, the economy is contracting.
Yeah, of course, but there's also 123 million Americans that are working right now and helping propel this economy.
156 million that are working.
Well, depending on if you want to use the...
You use payroll plus household data, it's total 156 million.
Yeah, and they're still having to borrow money.
More supportive to my point. More supportive to my point. And also, housing prices have increased double, triple in some areas in the last 3, 4, 5 years. A 5% decline, while nobody likes to see it, is part of what happens in an economy that has expansions and contractions.
And you just said it yourself,
we
prices
got Peter,
have tripled.
as much as we'd love to hear more from you, we got to wrap up this segment, but we will be getting back to